The Cornell Language Research Center and like other communities within Cornell is doing a lot to try to give a sense of normalcy to students and also let them hear like their voices heard. I know a lot of people don't feel like that right now. I know in the midst of a lot of change that a lot of people haven't experienced before, they don't really know how to deal with it, and not too many people have adults that they can go to talk about it or people that they trust. So I think it's great that whether we choose to accept it or not, that there are people that we can go to within our place of academic studying that we can talk to.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week on Speaking of Language,
we speak with 3 Cornell language students about their transition into remote learning over the course of this semester.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. Our special focus on language teaching and learning strategies in a virtual space continues today with stories from language students at Cornell.
We are excited to speak with Jabari Gambrel, JT Miller, and Skyeler McQueen, students of Wolof, Korean, and German at Cornell University.
Welcome to Speaking of Language, Jabari.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
JT.
Thank you for having me.
And Skyeler.
Thank you for having me.
So before we want to dive into hearing from all of you about how this whole process has been moving into remote instruction and learning online, please share with our listeners a little bit about who you are, what languages you speak, you are learning, what your language path has been. Jabari, why don't you get started?
Okay. Hi, my name is Jabari Gambrel. I am currently a sophomore at Cornell, double majoring in Africana Studies, and I'm a college scholar looking into foreign aid and border studies. The language that I study at Cornell is Wolof. I speak Pular, which is a language that is neighboring Wolof. I also speak French and Haitian Creole. And English, of course.
Yes, indeed.
JT, what about you?
Okay, I think my journey is relatively short. English is my first language, and as of right now, I will say it's the only language I speak, even though I'm getting very proficient at the language I'm learning at Cornell, which is Korean. Mm-hmm. Most of my life, learning a language wasn't a priority of mine. I've always valued people who spoke multiple languages, as I think it is a beautiful way to get to know other people, communicate with other people. And I think if you're traveling, it's very important to know some of the language in order to get to know the culture. However, it just was never a part of my vision for what I had. I was just focused on being a veterinarian, and that was all I had until I met a friend at the school I used to go to, UMass Amherst, who was into K-pop. She was from Poland. She spoke Polish, but she was very interested in K-pop, which language is Korean. And after getting into K-pop, I really wanted to learn the language as well. So when I transferred to Cornell University, that was the first class I tried to get into.
That's awesome. That's wonderful.
And Skyeler?
Okay, so I'm a native English speaker, and then in high school I took Spanish. So I'm in the College of Arts and Sciences, so I had to choose a language to take in college. Mm-hmm. And I thought, German always sounded interesting. I think I took Intro to Linguistics my freshman year, and we talked about the word structure in German. Mm-hmm. And I thought that sounded really fun, and I'd like to try learning it. And I figured, why not? And then I really enjoyed my classes, and I've just kept going.
That's awesome. So what has your experience as a language learner at Cornell been in general before this whole thing started? Can you talk a little bit about your path?
Yeah. So first year, I was accepted as a student in arts, architecture, and planning. And I wanted to study Wolof so that I could formally learn how to write and read, one of the languages that I grew up hearing a lot about that I never really learned how to speak, learn how to write or read in. And I found out that Cornell offered it through the Language Sharing Initiative. And I kind of jumped on the opportunity, sent out an email, and began taking classes and kind of fell in love with the process.
So, one umbrella thing that's amazing about language classes at Cornell in general is that I believe for almost all of them, the beginner level is 6 credits. It's a 6 credit class, and you have discussion every single day, and then you have lecture at least twice a week. So, it's very intense. It's very helpful because in the discussions, you're only speaking the language that you're studying. You're not allowed to use English at all. And then in the lectures, you learn more to then discuss within the discussions. And what I've noticed when it comes to like language competitions that I have done in Toronto, when I look at the hour requirements for a certain level, Cornell surpasses that. We get way much more in class time than I think is standard across the country for other languages. As far as the Korean program in general, the professors are incredible. My professor right now, Kim something Nim, Mr. Kim, he is amazing. He makes the whole class feel like a family, and we learn so well because we go by the book. But also, if you have a question that's completely random, he makes a teaching moment out of it, and I think that's incredible. The classes are small versus like having like my biology, chemistry lecture halls where it's like 200 people with one instructor, and then there's TA. But we have like maybe 20 students in the beginning level, 20, 26, and then like right now we only have like 11 or 12. So it's like really amazing to have that small environment where you just focus on something that you truly love. It doesn't feel like you're learning so much as you're just doing something you truly enjoy.
I think my German classes are really fun for like a variety of reasons. I think it's, I'm a math major as well, and in those classes it's always lecture. And in my German classes I really get the opportunity to get to know other students, which is so much fun, and also to talk about interesting things, whether that be like the fall of the wall or today's current events and
Yeah.
politics in Germany, things that I usually wouldn't get the opportunity to discuss.
That's great. How about your experience with the shift to remote instruction? How has switching to learning online been compared to your usual face-to-face experience?
I think that because yes, Wolof is usually taught remotely. Main thing that's changed for me in the way that I've been interacting with my course is sort of a ritual that I had developed in going to class, which I
Mhm.
never really acknowledged. I would always walk into the LRC and greet who I greeted, sit down, kind of have my own headspace and time. Where now it's more like a walk out of my bedroom into the dining room, which is definitely different and changes the sort of way in which I'm interacting with the class. Also, the on the other side of the camera, I was skyping or viewing into Colombia,
Yeah.
which everybody was sitting in a classroom together. So there was more of a flow and continuity of their conversation that
Mhm.
influenced my speaking. And now I think there's concern sometimes with Wi-Fi breaks up things, which is hard when you're learning a different language.
Yeah.
Um, but it also just changes. I think there's also some things that we've been able to do that are good as well, like the use of breakout rooms, raising your hand, writing questions, and our teacher was writing into the chat some of the spellings, which normally we would write on the board, but it was a lot
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
chat.
So I found out that we would be canceling classes for the 2 weeks that Cornell spanned it in my Korean class. And my Korean class is the class where I am the closest with my professor and with my other students.
Hmm.
So compared to that maybe being a happy moment or just a regular moment, maybe in another class, we were all very emotional. And we took pictures that day. We were very upset and we were crying. And there's seniors that we probably won't be able to see again.
Mhm.
So it was definitely a very emotional time. So throughout that process, I was thinking primarily about Korean as well as dog lads I work with. So those are two things that are kind of hard to do online. However, with the Korean class particular in comparison to the other classes that I am taking online, it has been almost the same, which I
Mm.
find incredibly amazing because there's so few of us and because of my professor, Kim Something Nim, it's just as personal as it's always been. We still see each other through the video live. We get to share a part of our lives. It's now like we're in our homes, so we
Mhm.
get to see that, and that can both be a scary and a good thing depending on
Mm.
how it is. But because of the family like atmosphere that we have, it hasn't been that much different within the Korean language program moving to online. And just earlier today on our Facebook page for the Korean language program, Song Nim, who is in charge of the Korean language program, posted a group photo of the beginners Korean online with all of our individual photos. So I think that the program itself, it's going to thrive um, no matter what vessel it is going through, whether it's in person or online. And I think that shows how strong the professors are, how strong it is for the students who want to learn, and how strong the Cornell language programs are.
So, funnily enough, for my one German class, it's German digital culture. We've already had remote class. We did it one day. I think my professor, her kids were sick and she was sick. So we did a Zoom class, which I think worked out really well because it was tough that first day, but then we figured out all the kinks and now it's been going really smoothly. I think both of my language classes have been going a lot better than my math lectures, which have been, it can be challenging to follow on your computer versus when we're discussing in German, I can look at everyone's faces and we can still talk. And I think the Zoom breakout rooms have been really useful for doing one-on-one chats as well.
Were there any other pleasant or positive surprises, things that you hadn't maybe thought about in terms of learning online that when you think back, you're like, it's actually not that bad?
Yeah, for sure. Sharing of media. So we watch a lot of short film clips. There's a lot of movies in Wolof and a lot of new television series that are in both French and Wolof. And our teacher has been able to flip her screen, which is completely different than when we're in the classroom. It's a lot faster. And also the sharing of information. We've been working a lot more with dialogues. So that sort of building more of a rapport in a weird way, digital learning kind of adds to that if it's in your private space. Also, I feel like we're all free to make more mistakes. It's a little bit more of a relaxed environment.
That's interesting. That's great.
I can't say in the specific context that there's been anything surprising or that was very different regarding the move to online within the classroom setting. Besides the fact that we do get to see a little bit more about our classmates and our teacher. I know for me, I've been showing my dog very often in my Korean lecture. We've been talking in Korean about her, and it's been pretty cool. I've learned a lot of animal terms in the midst of it, and as a science major, that's been very helpful and great. And I've also seen a lot about where my classmates live, and I think that that's very important. And I think sometimes we're very shut off and we're all in the same space, and it seems like we're all at the same level. And that's not true, and that shouldn't be something that separates us, but brings us more together because we know more about each other.
I think office hours for all of my classes via Zoom have been really convenient. I think I don't have to walk to somewhere far and I can make it in time. Also, for one of my German classes, we're Zooming with students in Germany this semester. So it's also really easy. I'm familiar with Zoom. We don't have to go through the whole 3-day trying to figure it out, how to create a meeting. Now we kind of already know how to use the software, which is helpful.
Is there anything you wish you had known beforehand before getting into this?
Yeah, Wi-Fi. Yeah, I think I underestimated how much the team at Cornell does in terms of making sure that everything's so smooth. The first Zoom call that we were on, I remember that my Wi-Fi was breaking up a little bit, which meant that I would be staring at the screen and I would hear part of what someone said and I would have to keep asking to repeat, which isn't something that I was really used to. But I think shoring up your Wi-Fi and making sure that your setup is in an enclosed personal space where you feel comfortable to speak and try in a different language, because a lot of it is trying. Yeah, I think that's very important. Definitely expect that.
And I think that's a really good point, because language classes are different from other subject matters, because you do randomly, when you're sitting at home or wherever you are, all of a sudden you speak in a different language and that the people around you are still around you. And that might be a little bit uncomfortable because it's not like you're in a physical space with other people who are also speaking the same language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think when everyone is thinking about this. It came in many steps, talking about COVID-19 and the severity of it and how it would impact us. I don't think anyone when going into 2020, even though 2020 is perfect vision, would have imagined that any of it would happen. Um, but I definitely wish that, I mean, one thing I'm very happy about is that I'm someone who likes to take a lot of photos. I take a lot of videos and photos. Every time I'm with my friends, I always ask if we can take pictures. When I was with the dogs and my dog left, I took photos and videos. So I have so much footage that I can look back on happily of those moments. But possibly, I would say it's just spending more time and valuing what I had. Like even the Cornell chimes that woke me up in the morning, I miss those now. So I think definitely just appreciating things more then that I don't appreciate, that I appreciate a whole lot more now would have been something that if I could go back, I would like to do.
I would say, I guess test taking has been the hardest thing to figure out. And I don't even know if I have an answer for that, but I think it's been a struggle. I just took a quiz today in one of my German classes, and it's like, how do you ensure that no one's cheating? And we ended up flipping our screens down, and the teacher could watch us write the quiz answers, which was just kind of awkward and funny, but I think it worked.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have any advice for your peers on how they can best manage their time in this entire remote situation? Like, what has worked for you?
I think that, which what I spoke about earlier with my routine, getting up and making sure that I am setting a time that I get up, regardless of when my classes start. I feel like at Cornell, I would kind of just get moving because I saw other people getting moving, and you start to hear different noises. I'm in a very peaceful environment right now. It's the kind of rural where I am. So making sure that I get up, I get showered, I start doing all my things. And for language specifically, listening to a lot of different media, more than I would. So like putting on Wolof music just to get me in the mindset.
Nice.
So before I would give advice, I would definitely say that I'm someone that also struggles with that. I'm someone who I'm up very late at night. I have all these deadlines scribbled in my agenda, but they pile up, and amongst a lot of emails, it's very hard to tell what's due, what's now. And it also seems at times that I'm more worried about getting things in, getting the deadline in versus just genuinely focusing on the learning. And I feel like part of that is missing in a lot of my classes. I think the best thing to do, and this is something that I'm talking to myself about as well as whoever might view this, is to remember the reason why you chose these courses. And it could be because you chose these courses because you actually like them, or it could be this is a necessity to get to where you want to go because you want to do something that you're going to eventually like. And for me, besides Korean, most of the classes, although there are a few that I actually really do enjoy, it's to get to vet school, which is, I feel, is the next step for me as of right now. So I'm trying to remember that the information that's in there is not just for right now, it's for later as well. So that's kind of motivating me at times to focus on the material and actually wanting to learn it. And instead of just like, there's an assignment, I need to do exactly what I need to do just to get this assignment through, especially when you don't have the lecture, the face-to-face, maybe the library, whatever elements that you had before that was a part of your normal schedule, which is a lot of what makes people have peace of mind, is having a schedule and certain places where they can go. Yeah. I think it's important to focus on what we all have, and that's ourselves, our minds, and what we love. And I think that can carry us through during this time.
Yeah, I think the best advice I've heard is to pretend you're still in school, like get dressed in the morning. If you have recorded lectures, watch them during the lecture time instead of watching them, at 9 p.m. at night, just to kind of maintain that sense of normalcy so you can maintain how you usually divide your time, because all college students have kind of figured out a balance at this point in the year. And it's now the challenge is to maintain that balance when you don't have to leave your bed all day or your apartment.
So before we sign off, we'd like you to share with us your favorite word in a language you speak or have learned and are learning or want to learn. I'd love to hear what that is.
Hersugol in Pular means to shame, which sounds a bit rough. But the way that it's used is usually like jokingly. So like you're shaming me. It's sort of said in a way when somebody presents information about you that's sort of questionable. It makes you a questionable character. You'd say like, "Oh, aherse nila," like you're trying to shame me in front of everyone. So yeah, that's probably my favorite word. Definitely, yeah.
Great.
Nice. Will you repeat it one more time for us, Jabari?
Hersugol.
I mean, it sounds very positive.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Favorite word. I would love to send this link to my Korean teacher, and I think he would laugh with what's first coming to my mind. I will think about this again, but what first comes to my mind is something that's really not even much Korean. It's like a mix of Korean and English. But kunyang pasu is something that my class says a lot. Kunyang just means just, and pasu, as it sounds, is pass. A lot of times in our class, we'll joke around, and our teacher will say something like, "We're going to read this together," or "We're going to do this very difficult activity." And we'll be like, "Kunyang pasu." That means just skip. We don't want to do that, which is like a mix of English and Korean, which we do a lot, which is very funny. But let's see. As far as just the Korean language itself, which I will say now, I think it's really beautiful that now I'm starting to want to communicate more in that language. Even in my head when I'm thinking, sometimes I think in a way that I feel the words in the Korean language will communicate what I feel or think better than what I could in English. Especially as I watch like K-dramas, I feel like I can understand a deeper meaning than what the subtitles in English are showing me, which I appreciate. A word in Korean. I'll say uri, which means we. I've noticed that in Korean, there's a lot of community. It's a lot about we instead of I, which I find in English is a lot about ourselves and just the language itself. Uri is very interesting to me because in English, we always say like, "This is my family, this is my mother, this is my house." But a lot of time in Korean, like it's Uri gajuk, our family, Uri omoni, our mother. Even if you're talking to someone that doesn't look like you, who's from a different culture, you use Uri a lot. And it's like this kind of like shared beauty and everything of like, almost like mikasa, sukasa, like my family, my house, your house. So I think that's something that's very beautiful about the language and something that I've had to learn a lot, along with the different honoring systems of how you speak to people that change that we don't have in English. So I just think that's something that's very beautiful.
That is beautiful indeed, and perfectly sums up what you have been talking about today. It's all about community, right?
I think going all the way back to high school, the Spanish word for carrot is zanahorias, and I've always thought that was funny. So, yeah.
I like it. That's a good one. Awesome. Thanks so much for speaking of language with us today, Jabari, JT, and Skyeler.
Yes, and thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. This is really cool.
With this episode, our 5th season of Speaking of Language comes to an end. We will be back in September with new topics and guests.
In the meantime, you can listen to our archived shows on our website at lrc.cornell.edu, on iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. We wish all our listeners a wonderful, safe, and healthy summer. Until fall,
Auf Wiederhören!
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu or look for Cornell LRC on Facebook and Twitter.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.